Have you ever wondered why some women prefer solitude without a permanent partner, not showing a clear desire to seek relationships? The reason for this phenomenon lies not in banal loneliness, limited choice, or past emotional trauma. The true underlying cause of this decision touches on deeper and more complex aspects, questioning established ideas about the role of women in society. When a woman consciously chooses solitude, she does not lose herself in this state, but on the contrary, finds her true self. This process of self-discovery, however, is not accompanied by universal approval, admiration, or support. It happens in silence, giving the woman inner strength and freedom that remain inaccessible to most. It is a mistake to assume that such a woman suffers from loneliness. On the contrary, she is selective, not agreeing to compromises. She is not cold and insensitive, but simply tired of giving her warmth to those who cannot appreciate it. In a woman who does not need relationships to feel complete, there is something that causes subconscious fear. This undermines the traditional system of control, destroys the myth of emotional dependence, and exposes an unpleasant truth. Many men are helpless in the face of a woman who does not need to be saved. At the same time, most women are only beginning to realize their strength and independence, looking into this quiet but deafening mirror of self-knowledge. As Carl Jung once insightfully remarked, everything that we try to ignore in ourselves, all our repressed desires and qualities, form our shadow. And in this context, single women who go their own way often become a reflection of the collective shadow of society. They embody what many secretly strive for, but few dare to put into practice. These women do not seek to loudly declare their thirst for love. They prefer to quietly talk about their decisions. They do not flaunt their lives in pursuit of attention, but rather retreat into the shadows to preserve their integrity. They are less and less attracted to fairy tale princes and more to their own inner world and peace. It is this choice that often causes discomfort to others, because in a world where it is customary to rush in search of a soulmate, these women discover an incredible power of self-sufficiency. A woman who has chosen a life without a permanent partner is not lost at all. She simply exists on a different level of being, on a level where there is no place for begging and persuasion, where freedom of choice reigns. She does not need someone else's approval. Only her own presence in her life is enough. That is why she so often becomes the object of criticism, condemnation, and attempts to label her. Many simply cannot understand that behind her external detachment lies a deep inner fulfillment that goes beyond the usual and challenges the generally accepted emotional status quo. She does not agree to just any love. She needs something more, something that does not diminish her dignity and does not restrict her freedom. And until that something appears in her life, she will remain a strong, whole, and self-sufficient person. Perhaps at the moment the realization of this eludes understanding, and it may seem that this is just an exaggeration, a manifestation of pride or a veiled emotional trauma. However, in the very depths of the soul, in the innermost corners of consciousness, a question flickers. This quiet question pulsates, despite all attempts to ignore it. What if this path of silence and solitude is actually the only road leading to the most important love, a love that begins with oneself? The silence surrounding a woman who has chosen to live alone is not emptiness or a vacuum. It is a sacred space, a refuge where she can find herself. And those who are not able to appreciate the significance of this personal space often label her as a cold, aloof, or even arrogant person. But few understand that this woman built her fortress not to shut herself off from the world, but to not lose herself in its hustle and bustle. As Carl Jung said, everything we refuse to face inside ourselves is ultimately projected onto others. And perhaps that is why many women still mistakenly take loneliness for a lack of something, while in fact it can serve as fertile ground for self-discovery and personal growth. While most people seek to fill the void through external connections and relationships, this woman has turned her gaze inward. And there, in the vast expanses of her own unconscious, she came face to face with the ghosts of the past that she had avoided for years. Childhood. Traumas, unspoken grievances, instances of abandonment and attachments that only masqueraded as love. Her choice of a solitary path was dictated not by fresh pain, but by a scar that had finally stopped aching. She hasn't lost faith in true love. She simply stopped settling for what others mistakenly perceive as love when it makes her feel inadequate. This woman knows the storms of life firsthand. She loved selflessly until she dissolved into the feeling. Losing herself in the process, she gave too much, content with meager scraps that shouldn't have been offered to her in the first place. But at some point, she came to a realization. This enlightenment wasn't instantaneous. It was a series of bitter disappointments that ceased to cause suffering and became valuable lessons. What the observer sees now isn't icy detachment, but soulful maturity. And maturity often evokes fear because it implies awareness, depth, and sincerity. The heroine no longer seeks aimless pastimes. She craves reciprocity. Empty promises no longer appeal to her. She needs to feel a real presence. Therefore, she may seem unapproachable to many. The truth is, she doesn't need rescuing. She wants to be seen for who she truly is. And that requires more than superficial charm and flattering words. It takes courage to delve into the depths where few dare to look. And it is at this stage that many retreat, not because she is complicated, but because she is self-sufficient. When a woman achieves inner harmony and becomes a self-sufficient individual, it evokes a mixed reaction in society, manifesting in two extremes: genuine admiration and subconscious fear. Admiration comes from those who also strive for integrity and self-discovery, seeing her as a role model. Fear, on the other hand, arises in the hearts of those who have not yet found themselves and seek their soulmate, hoping that someone from the outside will fill their inner void. However, this woman does not seek to complete anyone. She is looking for a partner with whom she can share her fullness and overflow with mutual love and understanding. Until then, she prefers to remain alone, not by chance, but out of loyalty to her soul and her principles. She is not hiding from the world, but merely protecting her personal space and inner world. It is important to understand the difference between forced isolation and conscious self-preservation. Unfortunately, the world is not always ready to accept such a woman, as society still holds strong stereotypes that happily ever after is only possible in a couple. Single people are often viewed with suspicion, as if the absence of a partner is a sign of failure or inadequacy. As Carl Jung once remarked, in a world ruled by conventions, there is little room for authenticity. But this woman does not live by the dictates of society, but in accordance with her inner essence. She often hears phrases like, "You're too picky, you should be more open, no one is perfect." In response, she only smiles calmly and with a touch of irony, because she knows that what many call pickiness is merely the necessary minimum for her. It is the minimum she deserves, and the realization of which has taken her many years. She is not looking for perfection, but seeks to find a person mature enough for love that does not bring destruction. Someone who has done as deep inner work on themselves as she has. And, let's be honest, you don't meet such a person on every corner. The feeling of awkwardness that arises in her presence stems not from her words, but from her very essence. She is living proof that happiness can be achieved regardless of external approval and support. And it is this circumstance that shatters familiar illusions. Men whose confidence is fueled by female insecurity sense a hidden threat in her. Women who are still languishing in the pursuit of approval feel inadvertently condemned. However, her existence is not aimed at confrontation. She is simply living her life. And the very authenticity of a person who has found freedom becomes a ruthless mirror for those who are still bound by the chains of prejudice and expectation. This woman is in no hurry. She doesn't need to force events to please anyone. She respects her own rhythm of life. And this is what causes hidden resentment in a society that craves immediate results. While the world strives for superficial entertainment, she seeks depth. She strives for true presence, while the world offers only the illusion of accessibility. She longs for connections on a soul level, while others are only concerned with creating an attractive image in yet another Instagram story. When a woman says a firm no, it is not a flirtatious game but a statement of truth. Her departure is not a theatrical performance, but an instinct for self-preservation. Preferring home comfort to the company of a superficial person is not a manifestation of arrogance, but a result of crystal clarity. This clarity, earned through pain and humility, becomes her personal revolution. She doesn't live to meet someone else's expectations, but to be herself. And this simple truth, to be, makes her inconvenient for the system. Perhaps the biggest concern for those around her is not her solitude, but the inner world she has found. As Carl Jung taught, those who look outside dream, and those who look inside awaken. It is this inner journey that she has made, a path not easy, requiring the removal of masks, confrontation with the ghosts of emotional dependence, and the reconstruction of herself from fragments. Now she looks at herself not through the eyes of others but with her own gaze, and this radically changes everything. How many times has everyone wondered if loneliness is a defeat or freedom? How many times have you had to justify the absence of a life partner? This woman has also gone through this, considering herself inferior because of loneliness, in a world where couples, even unhappy ones, are glorified. But one day she realized that it is better to be alone than to dissolve in a relationship, becoming invisible. And that day she promised herself never again to settle for less than what she truly deserves. Her life trajectory is far from perfectly smooth. On her way there are days darkened by doubts, moments filled with light sadness for the past, and nights immersed in deep, all-encompassing silence. However, at the same time an inner strength steadily grows within her, born from every decision made with full awareness. She has come to understand that true feeling does not seek to limit freedom, does not absorb individuality, and does not resort to manipulation. The love she seeks is a feeling that grants freedom, harmoniously complements her life, and provides support without suppressing her own self. And until such love enters her life, she prefers to continue her path of self-improvement in solitude. And this is dictated not by a sense of pride, but rather by unwavering honesty with herself. This woman is a vivid example of the Jungian process of individuation. She has experienced painful falls, faced her shadow side, plunged into the depths of the unconscious, and returned to life more whole and mature than ever before. And now, having known her true self, she does not want to become just a part of something whole again. She is not looking for someone to fill the void inside her. She strives to meet a person who will share this deep awareness with her. This can be frightening, as it requires a high level of emotional maturity and responsibility, and, unfortunately, not many are ready to love consciously and responsibly. Most still seek in love a way to fill an inner lack, satisfy the need for possession, or get rid of a gnawing sense of fear. Her solitary journey through life today is the result of a conscious choice, where every step is permeated with deep understanding. Rejecting the unnecessary, she shows true self-respect. Her absence from places where her presence is not appreciated serves as a reminder that love does not tolerate humiliating requests. She no longer seeks to prove her worth, and this inner confidence, born in the depths of her being, has a transformative effect on the world around her. A woman who has rediscovered herself becomes a force to be reckoned with. Her strength lies not in aggression, but in the crystal clarity of her intentions and beliefs. She, living without looking back at male approval, is fundamentally different from the one who once begged for love. Something in her inner world has been destroyed, and it is this painful process that has freed her. Sometimes only through complete collapse is it possible to find a new, more perfect form. Recalling Carl Jung's words that a tree striving upwards must have roots that go into the depths of hell, we can say that she has gone through a similar test. She descended into the hell of her own history, where she encountered ancestral fears, inherited pain, and traumas that affected not only her personal fate, but also the fates of all women who lived before her. The heroine of this story has made a decisive turn in her life, breaking the vicious circle of destructive relationships. She rejected those connections that repeatedly reproduced painful scenarios, and realized that her mission is not to take on the role of healer or savior, and not to be content with meager scraps of attention out of fear of loneliness. When she stopped settling for less, the world seemed to rebel, trying to convince her that she had chosen the wrong path. But she remained steadfast. At first, her confidence was shaky, then came the realization of her own worth, and finally, she gained invulnerability. After all, one who has already been at the very bottom is no longer afraid of the void. Now she is learning to find comfort in silence, to warm herself with the warmth of her own presence. She hasn't become an unapproachable fortress, but she no longer allows anyone to invade her personal space. There's a vast difference between an open heart and being defenseless against those who are ready to tear it to pieces. She's open to new relationships, but only with those who come with sincerity and truth, not with rehearsed lines and empty promises. Experience has taught her to unerringly recognize falsehood. Her intuition has sharpened, and her inner energy has become a powerful filter. She senses those who lack depth from afar and unhesitatingly walks away, not wasting time on empty conversations. The changes that have occurred within her are profound and fundamental, affecting the very core of her personality. These aren't just cosmetic alterations, but rather a return to the original archetype. It's as if she's touched an ancient, age-old wisdom, a genetic memory that a woman's true purpose lies not in submission and servitude, but in free self-expression, not in following prescribed frameworks, but in the boundless manifestation of her individuality. Having accessed this source of knowledge, she has awakened a dormant power within herself. A wild, intuitive woman with emotional independence, a woman who, despite seeming loneliness, feels connected to something great, to her own destiny. And no matter how hard those around her try to label her, to diminish her with offensive epithets, cold, complicated, distant, all these attempts are in vain, because she no longer strives to meet anyone's expectations. Her goal is to grow and evolve, transcending imposed boundaries. She no longer needs to fight for attention, as she herself radiates a magnetic presence. She doesn't wait to be chosen. She makes the choice herself, defining her own path. This shift in life strategy bewilders those who are still trying to control female energy, but she has already escaped their power. She has crossed an invisible threshold and found herself in a new dimension where she realized that true, harmonious relationships are only possible when a person loves and accepts themselves so much that they don't feel a desperate need for someone else. There's something sacred and incomprehensible in her footsteps on this mortal coil. She's alien to loud applause and honors. The recognition of the crowd isn't her goal. Her confidence doesn't shout, it's silent, and it's in this silence that her true power lies. As Carl Jung astutely observed, everything we carry within ourselves, sooner or later, determines our destiny. And perhaps that's why this woman, who consistently chooses herself, has become the creator of a unique destiny that not everyone can comprehend, but which many secretly envy. She no longer seeks to fill an inner void with ephemeral promises or convince others of her worthiness of love. She doesn't demean herself by begging for a place in someone's life, for she has grasped the truth. Presence shouldn't be begged for, it should be earned. And when the invitation doesn't come from a pure heart, she rejects it with dignity. She doesn't respond with anger or resentment, but retreats with the grace that is characteristic of someone who has lost themselves too often to allow the wound to repeat itself. Few can understand that this woman still craves love, warmth, and tenderness. She dreams of being hugged, caressed, and chosen. But now she desires this without losing her self-identity. For too long she has tried to fit into frames that are too narrow for her vast soul. Now she offers herself only where there is enough room for her integrity. And this requires a maturity that transcends ordinary romance, requires an awareness, a courage to face one's own shadow and, despite everything, continue to love. She harbors no illusions about fairy tale romances. Her gaze is directed towards a union of kindred spirits, a connection where there's no dominance of one over the other. She strives for a partnership where both participants can develop side by side, without suppressing each other's individuality, openly expressing their experiences, and not abandoning personal ambitions. Perhaps such requests may seem excessive to some, but she's willing to wait rather than settle for meager remnants of emotional intimacy. Such an attitude may be perceived as arrogance, but in reality, it's a manifestation of genuine self-love. A new female archetype is being born before our eyes. A woman who has left behind superficial passions and plunged into the depths of self-knowledge. She's tired of being just an object of desire and now craves respect. She chooses solitude not out of disappointment in love, but because she has realized that true love requires no sacrifice. And when this understanding comes to a woman, her world is transformed. She no longer needs to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence speaks for itself. In any place where she appears, a change in energy is felt, as if a subtle but perceptible restructuring is taking place in the space. There's no mystery here, it's pure energy emanating from someone who has weathered intense internal conflicts and returned to harmony with themselves, not because they conquered all their fears, but because they learned to live with them, not allowing them to take over. As Carl Jung would say, they achieved wholeness not by eliminating contradictions, but by integrating them. The heroine of this story doesn't turn away from love itself. Rather, life experience has taught her to avoid disharmonious unions where one person's well-being is built on the self-sacrifice of another. She remains open to deep feelings but seeks a love where she doesn't have to pretend or conform to others' expectations. She needs a love in which she can be a multifaceted person, both a source of light and shadow, both cheerful and sad, both calm and passionate. She realized that those who only accept the glossy side of a person don't know true love. Those who demand only positivity from a partner don't understand how important bitterness is for personal growth. This woman is too whole to settle for half-hearted relationships. She values her freedom and won't allow herself to be locked in a golden cage disguised as care. With a delicate soul, she can't stand superficial connections. At the same time, she finds the strength to follow her chosen path, even when it's painful and lonely, even when she's misunderstood. This is the path of an awakened soul that rejects fleeting recognition for a deeper truth. The world subconsciously fears women like her, self-sufficient, independent, and unyielding. They challenge outdated stereotypes, question old norms, and break unspoken emotional agreements that define a woman's worth solely by having a partner. When a woman makes the bold decision to break old, constricting contracts with life and rewrite her own story, she becomes a source of inspiration to others, and this is a revolutionary danger to the established system. Therefore, she continues her journey, sometimes with tears, sometimes with her head held high, but always confidently, knowing that she is no longer alone because she has herself. After everything she's been through, that's more than enough. The love that comes into her life will no longer be an escape from loneliness, but a triumphant celebration of her wholeness. This love will come not to fill a void, but to overflow her heart with joy and happiness. When a woman decides to walk through life on her own, the world around her tries to convince her that this choice is wrong. However, deep down she feels something important and profound aligning within her. This isn't arrogance or rebellion, but a rare wisdom born in the silence of self-discovery. The very wisdom that Carl Jung called individuation, that is, the process of becoming oneself, without masks or compromises. And when this process is complete, nothing external has more power than the truth pulsing in her chest. Truth doesn't need loud pronouncements. It manifests in a quiet, dignified departure when the door closes without a hint of resentment. It manifests in a wise retreat when the surrounding space ceases to be a source of inspiration and support. It shines in a smile turned to the world, even in moments of loneliness. for the realization that loneliness isn't punishment but a sacred vow of loyalty to one's own soul, becomes an epiphany. The soul of an awakened woman knows no submission, her light doesn't fade, she doesn't stoop to begging, she simply exists, and that's enough. The world will undoubtedly continue its attempts to convince her of her own inadequacy, offering distractions, fake princes, and love intended only for ostentatious consumption. But she has already looked behind the scenes of this spectacle. She has grasped the truth. The point isn't to find someone, but to never lose yourself again. And when this realization blossoms in her heart, everything around her is transformed. Thirst turns into insight, a sense of lack into a conscious choice, and expectation into a fascinating journey. What once caused pain becomes a valuable lesson, and what once constrained now grants freedom. This excitement, this spark, can be felt deep inside. Perhaps it's an echo of the past, an old wound, or nostalgia for something that never made sense. Perhaps it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you have become. In any case, something inside you yearns to be seen in its true light, something that no longer fits into the old framework, something that, if you allow it, can completely change your attitude towards love, towards others, and, most importantly, towards yourself. A single woman isn't just a person who goes beyond conventional notions. She is the personification of inner independence and spiritual liberation. Her existence serves as a vivid example that change and reinterpretation of life are possible at any pace, without regard to the opinions of others and without the need to prove anything to anyone. She does not strive to be a leader, but she also does not wish to blindly follow the ideals of others. This woman forges her own unique path, which may seem unconventional. And in this distinctive journey, she ignites sparks of inspiration in the hearts of other people who also strive for awakening. If her story resonated with your soul, perhaps it is because deep in your heart there is a growing readiness for a new understanding of love, a love that begins with self-acceptance and harmony with your own inner world, a love that blossoms in silence, in sincere presence, and in the truthfulness of feelings, a love that cannot be begged for, bought, or hidden behind a mask. And if this love has not yet knocked on your door, perhaps the reason lies in the fact that you must first become the woman who is no longer willing to settle for less than she deserves.